Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Breaking Barriers Now, the podcast on a mission to save lives. Today, my guest is Susan Ball. She is out of Nova Scotia, Canada. And from what I can tell about her, this is going to be the podcast of the year. Okay. So make sure that you
No
are
pressure.
subscribing and sharing. And I don't think there's going to be any pressure anyway, because I believe that this conversation is one that so many people need to hear. And I'm so appreciative that you are on here to help me not be the only voice that tries to get people to listen. This is something that many of us have gone through, have seen, or have known others that have gone through. And today we are going to help people break barriers. Susan is an abuse recovery expert, and she likes to be described as a disruptor, which I love that. So I think the more that we tend to heal, the more that we place boundaries on the people that we work with, right? So one of the things that Susan said before we started this, was she wants to make sure that people are ready. And that's the thing. You have to be ready for this journey. It's not easy. And that's why you have people in your corner who will help you get through it. Susan, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful to have you on today. And please just introduce yourself a little bit, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, maybe a little bit of your upbringing. And let's just start there.
Absolutely. Jody, thank you so much for having me. This is a very important conversation, and I want everybody who's listening to know that you can get out and you can create a life that is beyond your wildest imaginations. A lot of work, yes, but you can do it. So
Yes.
I had 4 abusive relationships, and each one escalated in violence until the last one truly did try to kill me.
Mm.
I was almost murdered on one night, but I did run for my life and I got away. I really thought that I was unlovable. I was unwanted. I didn't belong anywhere. And that directly came from my childhood, where I had spent most of my life being abandoned to other people, whether it was my older sisters, the neighbors. My mom and dad were physically violent with one another. It was equal in a lot of ways. My mom would bash him just as much as he would. Um, there was always yelling and screaming. I went to 26 public schools from kindergarten to grade 8. So I never bonded with friends or any of that kind of stuff. But through all of that, and then 4 abusive relationships, I really thought that my childhood was just my childhood. Everybody had crap in their childhood,
Mhm.
right? Like I never
It's
thought
your
much of
norm,
it.
right?
But it was the foundation for every one of my bad relationships, the foundation. That looking for to belong, that looking for love, that feeling of being wanted by anyone. If some guy said to me on the second date, Susan, I love you, I was like, yep, I'm in. Let's go. That, that's how bad it was.
Yeah.
When I left number 4, I lived in a furnace room. Only one cousin would help me out, and I come from a big Italian family, so
Mm.
nobody wants to get involved. They didn't want to get involved. But one of my cousins, who I was always friends with, gave me her furnace room. Literally, I slept beside the furnace,
Mm.
and I drank a lot. I was doing drugs. I was really living in my victim mentality. I was thought this is it. Like I'm just unlovable. I can say I wasn't suicidal. I never thought about it, but I didn't care if I lived or died. I was in that space. So I wasn't sitting back thinking, oh, I'm gonna kill myself and off myself. But I was feeling very, low and sorry for myself. Then one night
Right.
when I was very, very drunk, I was really drunk, sitting by the furnace, this little voice came in my head. It was my voice. And it said, Susan, who's the common denominator in all your relationships?
Ouch.
And I went, ooh, I hate you, not going there. How dare you blame me? I'm not at fault, blah, blah, blah. I argued with myself until I passed out. But when I woke up the following, well, I did. I was like, no way
An
am
argument
I
with
to blame.
yourself, you guys. I mean, honestly, like, I think we've all been there. You know, it's like if you don't have anybody around you to argue with, and then you end up arguing with yourself. And I don't know about you, but I've done it before, and I felt like, oh my, like, what is happening? I'm going crazy. I'm going insane. Right? Like, I can't even believe I'm doing this. What is going on?
You just picture a grown woman with her bottle of wine in a furnace room with her roll out bed, it was fold out bed, arguing about your victim blaming. You can't blame yourself. You're the victim. You're doing all this
Oh my
stuff.
goodness. Yeah.
But when I woke up the following morning, it had planted a little bit of a seed.
Mm.
Not much, but enough that it started to wear away. And I started to look at things from a different perspective. You know, who was I? What did I want? Was I following my dreams? Or was I living a should life? Was I doing all of these things because I felt I should, like getting married and being in a relationship? Uh, and what was love? What happened in my childhood? Who were these people? And I really had to go backwards through all of this. And I recognized that I was really being the wounded child in my adult relationships. I was coming from that space.
Right.
I wasn't being an adult. I wasn't being confident. I wasn't being any of those things. I was being this little girl who was still scratching the surface for any kind of morsel of love, attention, belonging, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And
We
that's
say
where the
I have
journey
some
began.
I have some, oh, well, a good friend of mine, a mentor, we talk about the inner 7-year old, the inner 7-year old child who didn't feel loved, who felt abandoned, who was abused, all these things. And here we are into adulthood, and that inner 7-year old, she'll come out, and she will come out in ways and in times that we don't even, we're like, what is going on? Right? But that's exactly what you're talking about right now. Wow.
Well, yeah, and I always thought, Jody, and there's probably many people who are listening, and I have clients who I kind of have to disrupt their thought process this way. When I say to them, you know, what was your childhood like? The very first thing they will say is, what was perfect? There was no abuse. That's a fallacy. There doesn't have to be abuse for you to have trauma out of your childhood or to have a inner 7-year-old.
Right.
I was never abused. My father never hit me. He adored me. My father was a favorite uncle. My mother was emotionally not there. Now I see her differently and I understand where she was coming from. But at the time, we don't react logically as children. We react with emotion. So we only
Right.
see it as we are not good enough. Got to do better. And that becomes our adult trauma response, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. I thought, oh, well, I wasn't sexually abused. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't starved. I wasn't, left alone in the apartment for a week without food. Those were the big things. And having to explain to people that it can be something very innocuous that gets imprinted and changes everything
Yeah.
for the 7-year-old.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. And you guys, anyone out there listening or watching, this is real life. And if you're experiencing it, it's okay. You can experience it. You should experience it, but don't stay there. Don't stay there.
And
And you're not alone. You're not alone. That's why I love being able to share these stories, because I want people to know they're not alone. I mean, I don't know about you when you were going through everything you were going through, but I know for me it was like I felt like I was it. Like, where are the other people that are, is anyone else going through this? And then I started meeting people who were, and that's what helped me. That's what helped me, just knowing I wasn't alone. you know?
True.
So what kind of, you said you had that conversation with yourself, right? And we kind of laugh about it, but you guys, this is real stuff. Like it happens. And like, what do you feel like was the turning point for you?
To I always say that I lived at the end of a block called the victimhood. I was in the last apartment with very dark curtains, and I wouldn't even peek outside. I lived there and I loved it. And it I loved it. Living in the
Yeah.
victimhood made my life simple. I had an excuse for everything.
Yeah.
I could drink too much, I could party too much, I could not have a job, I could come home crying from my job because they picked on me and look at me, I'm a victim. It was very comforting. It was comfortable, it was easy. I liked it. So my turning point was thinking to myself, writing out, I had a journal. I didn't think of it as a journal at the time. It was a piece of paper where I wrote my thoughts. I had a piece of paper where I wrote my thoughts, and I
Yeah.
thought, well, being a victim is really simple, but where am I going with this? And
Mm.
how is my victim holding me back? And I started to have a conversation with myself and the victim in me. This was the conversation. If I wanted to improve my life, if I wanted to create my life to suit me, to live my life unafraid, I had to step out of that comfort of being a victim. I had to kind of woman up to facing the truth of what happened to me. And the turning point was when I actually started to use the word abuse. I
Mm.
hadn't used it.
Hmm.
I hadn't used it. And a lot of my clients don't use it either. They get really uncomfortable with it.
Mhm.
When I started to say to people, I was in an abusive relationship, it would actually take my breath away that I was recognizing that. So there was this moment where I started to tell the truth. I told the truth about the red flags that I let go. I told the truth about the stories I told myself to let those red flags
Mm.
go, which were kind of interesting at the time. And that was the turnaround point. It was like I had to tell the truth to move my victim out of there and into the light, into the brightness, and out
Yeah.
of that place at the end of the block with the dark curtains. Because she
Yeah.
wasn't alive out there. She wasn't alive. I
Right.
wasn't.
Right. Oh man, that is so
Even my
true.
even even my inner 7-year-old was like, I don't really want
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Let's, okay, so you mentioned something that I kind of want to touch on just a little bit because there are people out there that are letting red flags go and they are doing the same thing that you're doing. I grew up with one who did it. So for you, can you describe maybe some of the red flags that you let go and maybe some of the stories that you told yourself to keep letting those go?
A very interesting one was before, okay, there's the common ones, isolation, telling you that you don't need your friends, that you only need each other, basically love will keep us going.
Mhm.
The quickness of the relationship, it's very, very quick and it's very intense. And they basically, suck all the air out from around you so that you only have them, you only see them, you're only relying on them.
Mhm.
But I can remember in the very beginning that he would do things um, like corner me, back me into a corner,
Mm.
and raise his hand. Now, this is before any physical violence started, raise his hand. And of course, tell me, not in these words exactly, but this was the message. I could really hurt you if I wanted to. I'm controlling myself, but don't push me.
Wow.
Right? So that's a red flag. I mean, if somebody did that to me now, I would be like, yeah,
I'm out.
there's the door.
Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
right. But what did I do? And what do a lot of us do? Well, that was a bit scary, but at least he didn't hit me. He is controlling his rage. That was
Mm.
my fault for enraging him. I've got to work harder to not enrage him so that he'll hit me. which is a complete lie.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. We do that because inside, in that inner 7-year-old who's looking for all of this love, we want it so badly, the dream of love and companionship and all of that, that we overlook and we deny, minimize, and rationalize all of that stuff.
Yeah.
There was making fun of me. He was very cruel. And in all of my relationships, this would happen. They would tell me to get dressed up to go somewhere, get dressed up, we're going somewhere. And you would come out of the bedroom all dressed up. And then they would look at you and say, you don't expect me to go out with you in that, do you?
Wow.
Or something to that effect. You look like a bumblebee dressed in yellow and you're so ridiculous.
Mhm.
You should know better than that. I'm
Wow.
not going to be seen with someone in a bright yellow dress. That's ridiculous. Like, just all of that kind of stuff to make you completely doubt who you are. And bit by bit, they chip away at our authenticity, our voice. We completely lose our voice because we're so concerned with keeping the relationship, not rocking the boat, that opening up and saying something is not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So even though he showed me that he was a violent man, I chose to say, well, he didn't get violent with me.
Yeah.
I got to do better.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tend to minimize, deny, mostly deny.
Mhm. Yeah. It's that enabler, I think, syndrome, right? It's like we, and I can only speak for, I haven't been through what you've been through, but I have seen it firsthand. And it's like, because we yearn for that love, we are enabling things and just dismissing them. And in turn, we're losing ourselves. We're not loving ourselves. And how on earth can we love anyone else if we're not even loving ourselves?
And we're abandoning ourselves. We are, in fact, abandoning ourselves in these relationships. When I had that realization, because I kept going on about my abandonment wound and everybody abandoned me, and then it dawned on me like somebody just went, pow,
Yeah.
you abandoned yourself. That
Yes.
was really a highlight in my journey. It was like, well, that's not going to ever happen again.
How many years ago did that happen? Because people think
10
this stuff
years ago
happens
now.
overnight. Okay, thank you for saying that. Because, you know, this is one of the things that is very difficult for a lot of people to understand because we live in this Pop Tart world, right? Where everybody just thinks, oh, it's magically going to appear. No, this is an ongoing journey. And when you
Oh,
sign up
yeah.
to take it, oh, you better be ready. You better be ready. Now, that's not to say it's a negative thing. It's a very positive thing. But it's a journey and we have to embrace it. And 10 years in the making is why you're where you are now. So thank you for saying that. I wanted people to hear that because you have to start in order to get there.
I get really annoyed when I see some of these magical solutions to find your healing and all of that, because
Same here.
sorry, I'm going to burst everyone's bubble. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
And even though I'm in a great place, I still have moments where I'm triggered,
exactly.
but I have tools and resources to bring myself back to a peaceful place. Because I was choked to blacking out, because I was
Mm,
strangled, I sometimes have trouble wearing necklaces or turtlenecks.
yep.
No, not all the time, but every once in a while I'll put something on a necklace and then I have to get it, I have to get it off.
Yeah.
And then I can breathe through it and put it back on and go, I'm okay, I'm safe. This is now, I am here, I am safe, put it on. But in that split second, that nanosecond where I put it on, it might trigger me to remember that moment.
That's really interesting that you said that. I don't wear turtlenecks. I will not wear a turtleneck. I will not wear anything that goes around my neck. I can't stand it. I honestly had no idea why. And then during COVID, when we had to wear a mask, I would, when I put it over my nose, I would start suffocating. When I was in the military and had to wear a gas mask, I would have to pull it off at some point. I would start suffocating. And when I was going through my trauma, I went through trauma therapy. I'm actually still going through it. We're kind of towards the end now, but when I was going through like the deep dark kind of stuff, I couldn't remember what happened. So it must have been something really early on in my life. But what we kind of came to the conclusion of is I must have either been strangled, or I do remember one time I almost drowned in the ocean. It's interesting how those things can trigger us to a point to where even though it was so long ago, it can still, so, but the fact that we're aware of it, like what you said, you're aware of it, those tools that you have. So now I have those tools as well. And that's how we're able to get through it. So I love that you brought that up, because it doesn't mean that all this stuff just goes away. None of it just goes away. You still have it,
No.
but we learn how to heal. We learn how to go through it, and we learn how to recognize the triggers so that we don't have to endure them.
Yeah, sometimes for me, it's like, oh, it's you. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, gotcha. Right.
Yes.
Like, and this is something I think it's so important. I'm glad you brought it up, Jody. This is a long-term commitment to yourself. This is making a commitment, a self-commitment to you, that you are going to follow this through. You're going to feel the feels, you're going to do the things, you're going to look at yourself inwardly. You're going to take that deep journey inwardly, because I know that there's um, a real backlash to people saying, you know, what were the gaps that you had that basically allowed somebody to manipulate and weasel their way in at such a level? Those are the things that you need to excavate and figure out so that you heal and you don't repeat. Because I repeated it 4 times, and I'm telling all your listeners, it just got worse and worse and worse, because every time I got hurt, I was more and more desperate, because that gap in my emotional well-being was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was getting more desperate. So until we look inwardly to fill in those gaps on our own, we're just going to keep repeating the cycle and repeating and repeating and repeating. So I know that there's a backlash to that. When I start talking about that, a lot of times people will say, oh, you're victim blaming. I'm not victim blaming at all. But I know for a fact that unless you look inwardly, you're just going to do it again. Sadly, or go back, or do it
Yeah.
again with a different guy, different face, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we can look inwardly and we think that we're good, and then something else can creep in and we end up right back where we started. And that's something else that I try to get people to understand, that that's okay too. It's going to happen sometimes. We have these old habits, and old habits are really hard to break. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he talks about it in one of his books where after age 35, you're set in stone. Any habit that you have is pretty much there. And so
Mhm.
it takes a lot of hard work to break that habit. So, it's kind of like an alcoholic going to the bar. You know, it can happen. You can fall down again. But the key is getting back up. Getting
Mhm.
back up. As long as you get back up, that's okay. It's okay. It took you 4 times. I'm
Recognize
probably
it.
one of the most stubborn people in the world, too. But we recognized it. Yes, what you just said, recognize it, and then move forward. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame the other person. Just take that step and be willing to move forward. Ugh. You can tell I'm kind of passionate about this, right?
Me too.
That's good. Two passionate people. What did the journey, you know, you talked about, you started this about 10 years ago. So, what does that journey look like for you? And what led you to being willing to share it with other people, and kind of coach other people through their journeys?
It's kind of a funny story. I
Okay.
was going along I was going along in my journey, and I actually went back to university, something that he had told me I was too stupid to do. I had
Mm,
learned how to drive. I did all of these things. And one day I met an old family friend and hadn't seen her in like 20 years. And she was like a master NLP practitioner person. I had no idea what that
Funny.
was. And she said, would you be interested, in your growth journey to come and see what it's all about, get your certification? It was like $3,500. And I said to her, I do not have that kind of money. And she said, it's my gift to you for what you've been through.
Wow.
So when I left that, when I graduated that, and I found it fascinating because it really, really helped my healing journey, because I learned so much about how the the brain is wired and how triggers happen and rewiring the brain and the little bus that goes along and trying to get out of it, the deep end.
Yes, yes.
Learned all of this stuff and I thought, oh, I gotta go out there and help people do this, live their best life. However, it never occurred to me that I was going to work with people who were ending toxic relationships. I was going out there just to be, live your best life, da 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 da. Every call I got was from somebody who was in some sort of an abusive relationship or had just left.
Mm,
So about 2 years after getting my certification, I was getting all these calls, and I went back to my mentor and she said, well, duh, obviously, that's your niche, that's your thing.
right.
Somehow people are seeing, or the way you're talking or what you're saying is giving that message that you understand them, that you've been there, you've done that. And I was so scared, to be honest, because it was like, oh, who am I to do this? Who am I? Well, it was through
Imposter
her encouragement.
syndrome.
Oh, it came up
I've
big
been
time. It
there.
was like, oh,
Yes.
oh my God, I don't know what to do with that because,
Yeah.
but it was through her encouragement and her mentorship that she kept encouraging me to do all of the things that I needed to do. And that's how I ended up here. And then, of course, it's grown and I've learned and I've created my own things and so on and so forth. But it was through her. But it was not my intention. I was just going to be a rah rah girl, be the best girl you can be, get out there.
Isn't it interesting how life can just take us in a whole nother direction than what we thought? I mean, if I think about when I started my business, I was just, I started personal training because I'd had 5 surgeries. I started getting into nutrition because I was trying to save my mom's life and I failed at that. But I found out I didn't fail. It was just, that was one of the healing things that I had to go through. But, it's interesting now coming on the other side of my own healing. I realized that because I was hiding so much, that's why I was only willing to operate in those little places, you know? So now that I've started, like, I don't hide anything anymore. Like, I'm an open book, ask me anything. And it's interesting now that, things are starting to open up because I'm just me, And how free do you feel? Because I know for me, I'm like, whoo.
Oh, I'll be honest. When I first started working with women after abusive relationships, and I was being interviewed for podcasts and starting out, my story was basically like this. Oh, yes, I was in 4 abusive relationships. Boom. Then the poor interviewer would be, because I
That's
I didn't
it.
open up about it. Now it's like blah 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 blah
I,
blah blah blah.
I know what kind of interview will we have right now? This would no, that wouldn't be good.
No, but I was so reluctant to
Yeah,
say anything because I thought, well, everybody's got a story.
they
Is
do.
just a story. I didn't see that my story would actually help other people leave or get help or anything like that. So I hid it. But now I'm just like so far out there. I think sometimes I scare people.
That's same here. Yes, you're not the only one there. But you know what? You know what
It's
I
like,
think that is. I think I don't think it's that we're scaring them. I think what might be happening is they're seeing what they're unwilling to do. That's a hard place to be.
absolutely spot on. That is spot on. Because I have people say to me, they will send me messages and stuff like that, and they will say to me, "Uh, I'm just so, I admire that you did this or you do this." And I'm not talking about great, jumping off cliffs or anything like that.
Right.
It can be average, random, silly things or videos that I put out, or I'll laugh at
Mhm.
myself. People are really admire the fact that I can laugh at myself. And I think that that is a real sign that you've come to a place where you're comfortable with yourself, you're at peace with yourself, and this is who you are.
Yeah.
Because I can laugh at myself. I don't get really down on myself.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody not too long ago, and I'm a fat girl now, and I never used to be. Used to be. And this was somebody, a cousin, a friend, and she said to me, you've really packed on the pounds in that sort of, derogatory fashion. And I said,
Mm.
yes, and I love every one of them. Every one of them is mine, and it's a
I love
cookie I
that.
remember. And she just went quiet because I didn't back away from it and go, oh,
Yeah.
I know, it's terrible. I gotta lose weight. Da, da, da. It was like, oh, oh,
Yeah. That's the thing too. People are going to bash us. They're going to. It's just it makes some people feel better to do that. And that's okay. But if we aren't bashing ourselves, like I mean, how many of us do that? I tell people all the time, I'm like, yeah, I've done it. I used to do it. I used to allow the people who I was around make me feel worse about myself. But why do we do that? Why do we do that? Like we are so we're such a people pleasing society, and I've
mm,
been there. And so I can say this from personal experience, and I'm sure you can too, where it's like we we will please other people at the expense of ourselves. Why do we do that?
I've I've worked through that one so many times because I call it the should life. We do so much of stuff in our short little lifetime where we think it's something we should do, not
Yeah.
necessarily something we want to do. I I can remember one of my weddings, and I come from an Italian heritage, so I've had 3 weddings. I'm not ashamed of that. And the very first one, I was 26, and all of my old aunties and my Nona and all of that were like, when are you going to get married and have babies and do all of this stuff? So I was seeing this guy. It was a really boring relationship. It was not the love of my life. And we talked about it, and I said, yeah, we may as well get married. We're living together. And I can remember going to the bridal shop. So there's 8 aunts, 2 sisters, and my mom at the bridal shop.
Oh my
And you know
gosh.
how the bride gets up on the pedestal after putting on the gown so everybody
I've
can see
seen it
it?
on TV. I've never done it, but I've seen it on TV.
So my mother, all these people, I get up on the pedestal, and she finally said to me, you are the most bored looking bride I've ever seen. It was because I didn't want to do it. It was not what I wanted to do, but I felt they
Wow.
were right. It was what I should do. Now, that
Wow.
marriage was not abusive. It lasted a year. We got divorced. It was very amicable, blah, blah, blah. But that was what I call, and so many people are a victim of the should life
Hmm.
without even realizing that that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it is comparisons too. And I talk about this a lot, especially with nowadays we have all this social media, right? Our kids are growing up, the next generation are growing up in this, and it's that comparison syndrome where we see what everybody else is doing. And I've been there too. I've been there too. And I literally had to stop myself where it got to a point, and I wrote about this in my book, and it's like I had to get to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna put myself there. I'm not even gonna, I don't even want to see it, right? Because I'm trying to heal. So I don't even want to see what everybody else is doing. I just need to focus on where I'm meant to be. Comparisons will take us down.
But the pressure that's put on everyone at Christmas time, Valentine's Day,
Yes.
um, One of the other ones, maybe even Easter and Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is bigger in the States than it is in Canada, but Thanksgiving
Yes.
or any other of those big holidays. Think of the pressure that is put on people to perform, to buy, to spend
Yeah.
money, to dress a certain way, to be invited to parties. If your neighbor's invited to 10 parties at Christmas and you're only invited to 5, well, you're doing
Right.
something wrong. And it's just incredibly pressurized out there.
Yeah.
It's when you get to a point where you say, well, I don't care if Christmas comes or goes or what happens in between. I'm going to do me on that day and before and whatever. That's when
Yes.
you know you've made it.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah, because that was definitely one of the best feelings. And I've never really been one for gifts or wanting to receive gifts or really big gift giver. I like to make people feel special. And I like to feel special. And so I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And so what you said just then, when you do get to that point where it's like, you know what? I'm not going to try to be like everybody else. I'm not meant to be like everybody else. There's that. Like,
It's the most amazing feeling because my
yes.
Christmases were tortured. And
Yes.
all my life I was ridiculed for being a hippie. And now I am just the happiest hippie that ever lived on the planet. And you can call me that all you want. And I embrace it. And
Yeah.
and there are things, labels that were given to me as a child, like selfish. Well, now I embrace my
Mm,
selfish. When I'm ready to be selfish, I get selfish.
there you go. Yes. Yes. I think
Just
we
like
have to be selfish a little bit, and society's don't be selfish. Well, I'm one of the most kind, selfish people you'll probably ever meet. But I'm
me too.
selfish. I'm selfish in the mornings. Don't take my morning away from me because look, everybody around me knows it. If you want me to be a better person for you the rest of the day, you should probably not interfere with my morning. It's a
That's
non-negotiable.
authentic. That's so authentic to me. But I bet you thought you had to do better or learn a different way or
Oh, I
stop being
did.
that
I
way.
did. I
Or, yeah,
used to give my mornings away. I used to train people first thing in the morning. I didn't have time for myself. And then I was trying to kind of intertwine my own health in there. You know, that's not how we are supposed to do it. We have to take care of ourselves first, and then we can take care of everyone else, you know? And people will be like, but my kids, well, I'm a mom too. Of course, she comes first when she wakes up. But I've already taken care of me by then. We're good.
that's what I used to do. I used to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning because my second
Yes.
one was like just full of beans. And once her feet hit the floor, you, that
Yes.
was all
Yes.
it was about. So I got used to getting the 5 o'clock in the morning so I could sip my coffee in the quiet.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. So I talk to people about that all the time. Like, where's your time? Where are you spending some time with yourself? Yeah, one of my clients, she just had her third child, and that literally was a conversation we just had, where it was like, hey, you gotta give yourself a few minutes. You know, you got to.
An interesting question to ask, and I ask my clients this when we first start working together. Write down your 10 top priorities. That's the question.
Yeah,
And you will get my children, my this, my that, my job, my career, da 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 da. Da. And then I let them read it all out and I go, where are you on the list?
yeah, that's good.
You should be number one.
Yeah.
Always and forever number one. Now I know that when you have kids, that's a little bit harder to balance.
Hmm.
But being number one makes you aware of your needs and your wants and your desires. And when you are draining of energy, you can say to somebody, this, I need to go and replenish I
Hmm.
gotta, I need time for me.
Yeah,
But you can only do that if you're number one on your list.
yeah, right. Like one of my therapists says, you can't pour from an empty cup. I've tried
Yeah.
For many years, I tried, and I'm sure you have too. You can't pour from an empty
Mm-hmm.
cup. It'll take you down. I can say that from personal experience. It'll take you down.
I'm very strict with my clients too and my timing. I've
Hmm.
had people say to me, try to get in sooner or stuff, and I say to them, no, I have a standard, very disciplined 1 hour break between clients where I get to have a cup of tea, maybe
Yep.
read a book, relax, because it's a lot. A lot of
Yeah.
these stories, they might trigger me, they might upset me. Um, it's a it's a lot, and I love it. I love it, love it, love it. But I put me back at the top as soon as we're
Yeah.
done because that's where I have to rejuvenate. I have to
Yeah.
rekindle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the part that people don't see. They don't see, they think that, what we do is just, beautiful and everything like that. And it is beautiful to watch other people grow. Like I love watching other people grow because I know what it takes to get there. But it does take a lot out of us because we're still on our healing journey too. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. So I love
Nope.
that you are committed to yourself and that you're very authentic and you tell people up front about that because that should show them something and they should respect that.
Yes. And a lot of times they will say to me, I admire that you can do that. Well, you can too. There's no need to admire. You can admire
Exactly.
yourself.
Exactly. I know when people say that, I'm like, there's nothing at all I'm doing. Nothing. And I'm doing a lot of stuff. So that's what people are like, you're doing so much. How do you keep up with? I'm like, I'm one of the most well balanced, productive people you'll probably ever meet at this point in my life. But I wasn't like that before because I didn't allow myself to be. But you can do it. You can. Anybody can. Can I? You get this too, where it's like people are like, "Well, I could never do that. I could never wake up at that time. I could never." And I say, you know what? You can't because you're telling yourself you can't. So you've already taken it out. Yeah,
Yep.
I can't help you. I can't even help you at that point. Let me know when you want to see if you can.
Well, the biggest one that I get is the very first thing I instruct all my clients to do is they must go no contact to break the addiction, to break the trauma bond, to break all of that stuff. I can't do that.
Mm.
Well, you can, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful, and you will feel like you would rather die than go no contact, but you have to go no contact. Now, they cheat, but they always slip up because just last week I had a client say to me, well, I don't care what he does, but the other day when I was looking at his Facebook, and then she went quiet, and I went,
Oops.
no
We do. We
contact
tell on
is no
ourselves, you guys.
secret
Don't
now.
even try. Don't even try it. We tell on ourselves. Look, I thought I could hide all kinds of stuff, and I had a therapist. She was just like, I already knew that. Oh, what? What?
Yeah, how
People
do you
can
know
see
that?
right through you.
Yeah.
We've been there. We've already been there, you guys. We've already done all that. I have a
Oh
12-year
yeah.
old. I tell her the same thing. I've already been there. You're not gonna get nothing past me because I've already probably done it.
Yeah. I used to say that to my teenage girls. I'd say, oh, come on. I grew up in the era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, free love. You really think? He's like,
Oh man.
but mom,
Nope.
no, no, no.
Good luck.
Nice try though. Good luck with that.
Oh man, I feel like we could keep this going, and we are gonna I want to stay connected with you, definitely. But we are gonna have to wrap this up just for the sake of time. I want to tell people about you have a freedom journal on your website. And I wanted to make sure that I talk about it a little bit. You guys go to her website. It's www.recoveryafterabuse.ca because she's in Canada. So just remember that. All right. She has a free freedom journal that you can download. And I'm a writer, so I love journals. So journaling, I know it's not easy for a lot of people. Some people, they're just like, it's one of those things, those things that those limitations that we put on ourselves. Well, I don't write. I'm not a writer. I can't write. Blah blah blah. Right? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Just begin and go from there. I love how you laid it out. You know, you have everything, right there in front of people. And you have a quote that I pulled up, and I want to read this quote. And if I'm looking off screen because I have another monitor over here, it says, "It is of practical value to learn to like yourself. Since you must spend so much time with yourself, you might as well get some satisfaction out of the relationship." Yes. Yes. When I saw that, yeah. I was just like, yes, she is on it. She is on it. You guys, yes, we are with ourselves 24/7. We are with ourselves more than anyone else.
And it's funny. One of the things is we have a mean girl inside of us, the mean
Yes.
girl who tells us, oh, you don't look good in that. Oh, you should do this or you should do that. My last little word of wisdom here is, ladies, when you hear your mean girl coming up, acknowledge her and go, oh, there you are, mean girl. I don't have time for a chat today. And release her,
Yes.
but
Yes.
acknowledge her, because
Release
if you don't
her.
acknowledge her, she'll keep coming.
Look, that's a mic drop. That's a mic drop right there. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Acknowledgement. Acknowledge the 7-year-old. It's okay. Acknowledge your feelings. They're going to be there. Acknowledge the mean
mhm.
girl. But don't let them win. Don't let them
Oh,
win. They can't take you down unless you let them.
exactly.
Oh, man. Ah, yes. Yes. Well, on that note, you guys, I don't want to end this, but we do have to. But I really I hope and pray that everyone out there that's listening to this, share this podcast, share it with everyone you know, because you know what? Most people don't talk about this stuff if they're going through it. So share it because it might help someone. It really might just help someone. And it might be someone that you never even expected. You know, I talked about suicide before, and I've known people who have committed suicide, and it was always the people I never would have seen it coming. Never would have seen it coming. So share these stories, you guys, because they need to be heard. They need to be heard by more people. Susan, you're an amazing person. Thank you again for just gracing us with your presence today. I really appreciate this conversation. Um, Keep doing amazing things because you're saving lives too. And the more of us that are doing that, oof, it's going to be big.
Thank you for having me, Jody. I really enjoyed being here. It was a great conversation.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. I agree. You're welcome. You guys, this has been another episode of Breaking Barriers Now with Susan Ball. She is she's out here to help you guys get through your trauma. There's a lot of us that have been through it. So don't ever think that you're the only one. But we're also the testimony that you can get through it. And we also show that the people that you're around make a big difference. I'm pretty sure, Susan, your circle is a whole lot different. I know mine is.
Oh, and I handpick, and
Yes.
I'm really picky. I'm really choosing now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's powerful. That power of choice, that is powerful. So you guys definitely make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe to this podcast, share it out to everyone that you know, and let's continue to save lives one at a time. Thank you again, Susan.
Thank you, Jody.